How is everyone this afternoon? Having a good time? Yeah, woohoo, super excited. All right, so how many of you are feeling like this on a daily basis? The struggle is real, and that's not what we want. What we really want is to be feeling a little bit more like this. Yeah, smash the patriarchy a little bit while we're at it, hey? So let's talk about this idea of what I have termed work-life blank balance, because you've probably heard about work-life balance. You work, you pay your bills, you go home, you sleep, you rinse and repeat and do it over again, and hopefully you're getting home in enough time for that sleep. But then there's this idea of blank, and this is your passion area, whether it is open source contribution, whether it is volunteering with the Girls Who Code Club, whether it is competitive dancing or rock climbing, some area of your life. And so how do we find balance between our work, between our life, and between something we may be truly passionate about? For me, this is a little bit about what my life, work, and blank looks like on a daily basis. With my life, obviously, I care about paying my mortgage, making sure the bank doesn't take my house. Cooking and meal prep is a big part of me. I do get hangry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm hangry, so I try and avoid that for other people as much as I can. Home maintenance, making sure my pets are fed and taken care of and taken to the vet. Making sure my husband is taken care of. He's fed, he's taken to the vet. Just kidding. No, he's doing a really good job taking care of our fur babies while I'm conferencing this week. But all these different things, and that's just during my life. As far as work goes, I'm a JavaScript consultant at a company called Bitovi, and so I'm doing everything from balancing client meetings and training and doing code reviews and pull requests with them to actually pushing out features or writing new training or all sorts of things. Not to mention when I have to go and enter my time codes in and make sure I'm not pissing off HR and getting them everything they need and expense by the end of the month, that really starts to pile up. And y'all, I'm still trying to learn RxJS. That shit is hard. And then when we talk about my blank, I'm the founder of Kansas City Women in Technology, which is a nonprofit trying to get more women into tech careers in Kansas City. I have about 60 women on my leadership team. We run about 5 to 6 programs a month, along with yearly workshops like Django Girls and NG Girls. So that is a lot of work between coaching and mentoring and making sure that everybody on my team is happy and volunteering and doing what they need to do or whatever they need to have to do their jobs well. That means sometimes managing crises, responding to emails. I also do a lot of public speaking, and so I'm having to spend a lot of time crafting talks and submitting proposals and making travel plans. This is everything that I am constantly thinking about, constantly churning on, while I'm trying to manage everything that I have going on in my work-life blank. How do I do this? I'm just kidding. I do not actually have a time turner. I do not have a special device to go back in time and repeat hours. What I do have are a couple strategies, and that's what I want to share with you all today. We're going to talk about prioritizing, automating, balancing, finding tools and processes, recompensating, and finally working smarter, not harder. Strategy number 1, let's talk about prioritizing, because I'm sure you felt that just terror when you get in on Monday and it's one of those weeks and you have so much on your plate and you have no idea where to start. Just everything seems like it needs to be done right now. You've got 20 unread emails. We're not even going to talk about how many Slack notifications you have. And it's stressful. So how do we begin to prioritize and make sure that we can handle everything on our list that needs to get done? Dwight actually has this great quote called, "I have 2 kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." And so somebody's actually made a matrix out of this called the Eisenhower matrix. And this is how we can begin to take everything that we have going on that we need to work on in our life and prioritize it. So if we start in the top left quadrant, we have the quadrant of necessity. And these are problems which are both urgent and important. So these are pressing problems. If you have some sort of deadline-driven project, maybe production goes down and that's something you need to deal with right away. These are all kinds of the things that you can focus and put on your list first. From there, we can move to the top right. And this is the quadrant that is important, but not necessarily urgent, the quadrant of quality and personal leadership. So these are things that are very important for you to be better at your job or your blank or whatever you do that don't necessarily need to be done right this minute. It might be reading a self-help book, it might be learning a new skill, it might be practicing something that, again, you do not need to do right away, but that is good to prioritize when you have downtime. In the lower left, we have the quadrant of deception. These are things that seem urgent but aren't necessarily important. And again, let's talk about Slack notifications, y'all. They do not always need to be answered. You can snooze those suckers until a later time. You know what else you can do? Close out of your email for a couple hours. I promise it's gonna be okay, nothing's gonna catch on fire, and you can get some work done without those notifications distracting you. Of course you can go back to them because somebody might need a question answered, but know some of these things fall into the quadrant of deception and they shouldn't necessarily be pulling your focus from the top 2 quadrants you need to be working on. And then finally we have the quadrant of waste. These are things that are not important or not urgent. Social media, TV, kind of anything you do goofing around on your computer. This quadrant says this is a quadrant of waste and these things are not necessary. I think that is bullshit and I will tell you why later on in this presentation. But so again, as you begin to think and try and prioritize and figure out everything that you have to do on your checklist for this week, use this quadrant to help you kind of align that. Next step is eating the frog first. Has anybody heard this before? Anybody who hasn't been to this talk before heard this before? Okay. So this is a quote by Mark Twain that's basically, if you eat a live frog the first thing in the morning, it is the worst thing that can happen to you all day. And you're like, Jennifer, why the hell would I eat a live frog? What is wrong with you? Okay, well the frog is an analogy for something that you really don't want to do. For me, that is emails. Emails are the bane of my existence. They just stress me out. They take so much emotional and mental energy because I really hold myself to a high standard of how I want to respond to them. So I eat my frog first. I do my emails in the morning, like I get all that stuff out of the way before I start my work day, and I get this nice little endorphin rush because I've gotten that off my to-do list, and all of a sudden I can do the things I care about. I can write code, I can have productive conversations with people. All the other emails that I get throughout the day, unless they are some sort of absolute hair on fire emergency, get snoozed until the next day, and I will deal with them then. So eating the frog first can help you get the really hard things of your day out of the way so you can be more excited and more productive throughout the rest of it. And you're like, well, Jennifer, what about creative workflow? I'm a really creative person. I'm kind of a big deal. I can't just like put my creativity on hold or prioritize it. All right, I got you, boo. I got you and your Kanye self. What works really well for me is having a creative placeholder. So for instance, when I'm writing talks, a lot of times I'll be having a conversation with a client and they're really struggling with something and I'm like, shit, I should definitely put that in a blog. I should put that in a conference talk, something like that. I have a system where I can document thoughts for when I can get back to prioritizing them. So that's really helpful for me. The other really important thing to remember is Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. And this means that no matter how perfectly you prioritize everything going on in your life, something will blow it to shit. And if you can be aware of that and be able to roll with the punches and understanding of that, things will go a lot better for you. This applies for the other people in your life. Sometimes you'll be working on a project, you'll be working towards a deadline, and a coworker has a crisis because their kid is sick or their air conditioner has gone out or there's some sort of crisis that they didn't account for. If we can have more empathy for ourselves and for others when dealing with these unforeseen twerking up against a door pants on fire situations, we'll be more productive in the long run. All right, strategy number 2, automating, and I like to call this DevOps IRL. Should be pretty natural to anybody who's technically inclined and hates doing anything more than once. But one of the most important things you can do is auto pay. Eliminate your need to remember to pay your bills. Your credit score will be happy, so will your parents. They will quit judging you. But it's just one thing that you will not have to focus on, so you can spend your mental energies thinking about the things you really care about. I should not be wasting mental space going, oh shoot, what day of the week is it? Is my mortgage going to be paid on time? So anything you can do to get your finances in order to auto pay is really, really helpful. Auto communicate. You can definitely create canned responses for Gmail, so if you're a person whose job is heavily utilizing email, use tools, find things to do to help automate your processes. For Kansas City Women in Technology, we have a pretty extensive interview process, and we have like 5 or 6 different canned email responses that we use to send out for candidates that allow them to schedule things on our calendar and move really quickly through the process. So something that used to take me a lot of time and mental energy throughout my day, just through optimizing those emails has reduced that time to the click of a button, and it's phenomenal. You can proof your work with Grammarly, which is an extension. Is anybody in here like just such a good speller? They're like, my emails are flawless. Nope. All right, use technology to help you out in that. Auto communicate and make sure all your stuff is proofread with Grammarly. Again, you can set reminders for Slack notifications, so if there's something you need to get back to or a reminder you need to set for yourself, auto communicate that. You can also create to-dos for yourself and your team in Slack. And I really like to harp about this because how often have you had a really great conversation in Slack about something your team should do, and then it goes past the scroll line and it disappears into Narnia or wherever anything else goes above the Slack fold. So that can be a really helpful trick. For everything else in your life that you could possibly look into integrating, you should definitely check out tools like If This Then That, EmailPet, and Zapier. These are all really, really phenomenal tools you can use to integrate everything. Auto-market yourself. As women, we have to work a little bit harder to get recognized for our efforts sometimes. You know it's true. So spend the time to really craft a good bio and get a headshot you love. I know writing about yourself in the third person is just like awkward and weird, but once you have a really solid bio done that you can get reviewed by your friends and have it ready to send out, it'll help you out a lot. Getting a headshot is great. A lot of conferences have actually started to book photographers who will do free headshots, which is great. Otherwise, find a friend with one of the new iPhones or the Pixel 3. Those are pretty sweet. Use social media tools to manage your content. If you are trying to curate some sort of web presence, if that's in your blank area, you can definitely use social media tools to schedule content ahead of time. For me, I'm really good about blocking off Sundays on my calendar to get all the work done I need. So instead of like having to curate different things throughout the week, I can do all my work during that scheduled Sunday morning and then be good to go the rest of the time. You can also set up Google Alerts for your name or your company. So like, let's say you're working on some new open source project and somebody writes a blog post about it. You can get notifications of that so you can integrate that into auto-marketing yourself. Auto-domesticate. This is a fun one because we are not quite woke enough as a society yet, and as much as I love my husband, I am still in charge of most of the household shit. I think I might try and make him wrap all the Christmas presents this year. That's gonna be my woke goal. But look into cleaning services. For me personally, I hate dusting. It's just exhausting and I hate it, and I will never do a thorough job anyway, and that's time it's going to take away from meetings I could be having with my nonprofit or really valuable content I could be creating. So I look into cleaning services. I definitely outsource lawn care projects because I have no desire ever to mow a lawn. That just does not need to be on my to-do list. I'm also a big fan of cleaning up as you go. Has anybody seen the Netflix special yet, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up? Have you subsequently Marie Kondo'd the shit out of your house? Like, I had like these huge boxes filled up and my husband's like, you're throwing that away? And I'm like, Marie Kondo says you're not allowed to say that to me. But this can be really helpful to reduce clutter and have to spend less time cleaning your life. You can also try a meal prep service. I really do like Blue Apron and HelloFresh. They do take 30 minutes or less. Like, I know that seems like a hype and you can even be like, oh, I'm the worst cook in the world, that can never happen, but I promise you they do work. I have tried them. And finally, get the monotonous items shipped to you. You're always gonna need toilet paper, you're always gonna need paper towels, you're always gonna need garbage bags. I have cats and dogs, so we need dog food, cat litter. These items can all be regularly shipped to you. Like, I do not know what I did before Amazon Prime, or I guess my little sister is like, well, Jennifer, there's this thing called Target, and I'm like, ooh, okay. But all these items I never have to think about. There's never that dramatic conversation where I'm in the bathroom and I'm like, husband, are we out of toilet paper? And there's no panic. It's just something less I have to think about so I can focus on the things that matter. Okay, so big picture here for this section. Spend your time and your energy implementing the big ideas and solving the big problems. Find the redundancies in your life and find ways to minimize them. These are things that you should not need to focus on. Let's use technology, let's use automation to do everything we can so we can focus on what matters. Because here's the truth. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. As far as I know, nobody else out there has a time turner. But what really matters is how you use that time. Okay, so let's talk about finding balance because I think this is something that does not get enough credit. I want to talk about the stress plus rest equals growth equation. If you work out, you might be familiar with this concept. So when you're working out and you're trying to get your muscles to grow, when you're actually lifting weights, those are tearing the muscle fibers apart. And then when you rest, they grow back together and all this other sciencey stuff happens that we're not going to go into, but that's what actually creates the growth. So it's not just the working out part, it's the rest and recovery that aids in that muscle development. And that applies for everything else we do in our lives. So I like to talk about what's called the cycle of competence because I think that explains really, really well kind of what we're going through. There are times that you're going to be learning a new technology when you're unconsciously incompetent. You're not aware of what you don't know. Conferences are a really great place to find that out. Maybe you heard some things today that you've never heard of before. You are now consciously incompetent. You know what those things are and you know what you don't know and can go and begin to research and begin to learn about them. From there, when you've really started to get a knowledge base around this thing, you have more skills around applying this effort, you've moved into the stage of conscious competence, and this is where you do know what you know. You know exactly how much effort or energy or whatever you need to implement this new sort of skill. And then as you really find and hone the skill, you move into the quadrant of unconscious competence, which is where you don't know what you know. You are such an expert that this seems so normal to you. For some of us, that's like we're so used to walking now, but you probably can't remember being a baby trying to learn how to walk, but that was such a hard skill, and now you walk and you talk, and it's very unconscious. You're not even aware that that is an issue. And so if you can think about your career and your learning and growth and understand where you fall into this quadrant, you can understand how learning is important and giving yourself rest to be able to grow is important as well. These all will be linked in the slides later, so there's the link to the rest of that article. Does anybody in here feel like they get enough sleep? Couple hands? Yeah, I hate you. I definitely do not. But it is really important because, again, if we want to be growing in the ways we do, we need to give our bodies a chance to recover. We need to balance out all this hard work we're doing. Using a fitness tracker can be really good to monitor your sleep, to have a better idea of what's going on. Avoid stimulants and light before bed. And I know that you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to do this. You're sitting there scrolling through Instagram or Reddit or whatever you're doing late at night. But I promise, if you can start to remove that habit, you will start sleeping better and sooner. I'm one of those people that my brain is constantly churning, and you can probably assume that based on the rate that I'm talking to try and get through all this content to you today. But I really have trouble turning it off. And so something that I've found that really helps me sleep are audiobooks. And I tend to play an audiobook that I've heard a million times before. This allows me to stop thinking about whatever I have going on in my head, whatever situations I'm running through, and really focus on the words of the audiobook. And because it's Harry Potter, I've read it a million times, there's no plot curve that's gonna like throw me or really keep me awake on the edge of my sleep. And so that's something I have found that really works well for me. Apps and music and white noise creators can all be really good, but I would encourage everybody to try and figure out what they can do to help themselves sleep better, because we are all different. All right, who are my morning people in here? And my night owls? Okay, so it's good. It's good that you know this about yourself, and it sucks that the industry has not caught up and is still trying to force us into these 9-to-5 boxes. But it's important to know yourself and what kind of person you are, because then you can begin to push your most important and your most difficult work towards those hours that you know you are alert and you are awake and you are productive. For me, I have this like really happy space between like 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Those are like my productivity hours. So anything I know that's really going to take a lot of work or concentration or focus, that's when I put that in that time, and it helps me be much more efficient. Prioritize your health, and this is the part where I harp about going to the gym and taking care of our bodies because it's connected to our brains. But this is actually a really cool scan. So the brain on the left has just been sitting quietly meditating for 10 minutes. The brain on the right, walking for 10 minutes. And that is the different amount of stimulation. And in technology and STEM careers, like our brains are obviously the biggest asset we have, the biggest tool. So why would we not do everything we can to optimize and really generate power for that tool? And that means we have to be taking good care of our bodies. If you think about it, a 1-hour workout is only 4% of your day. And this workout does not have to be anything superhero. You do not need to be like Jesse Graff, like American Ninja warrioring through the gym. You can just be on a treadmill. And it's really amazing to even just take that time to slow down, get away from a keyboard, and really start to think about problems. You'll be amazed at the level of abstraction you can get to when you take your hands away from the keyboard just from an hour, focus on your body, and come back really, really refreshed. Excuse me. Another part of balancing is learning to say no. And this is really, really hard. For me, I danced West Coast swing competitively many years ago, and when my nonprofit started taking off and I was trying to buy a house, there were just so many things going on in my life, and I loved dancing. But I had to say no because I could not put that into my life and perform at it as well as I wanted to perform everything else. And it is okay to say no to things. That does not mean you cannot come back to them later. On the note of saying no, it is perfectly okay to say no to toxic relationships. You do not deserve to be treated by shit like by anybody. And this includes family. Just because somebody shares your bloodline does not mean they can be verbally abusive to you. because we are humans and we fear rejection, and when people criticize us, it hurts. And you fixate on that, and you spend time thinking about that. And if you've got somebody in your life who is constantly making you feel bad about yourself, you are spending time thinking about that instead of thinking about the things that are going to make you more productive and better and awesome in delivering whatever great, unique skills you have to offer all of us. Do not set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You can also turn off push notifications. Blasphemy, I know. Try it just for a day. Like, take this Sunday, and I challenge you all to just turn off all your push notifications on your phone and see how you feel at the end of the day. It'll be blissful, I promise. I'm still trying to convince my husband. I yell at him for that a lot. On that note, get off social media if what you're doing is comparing yourselves to other people. And I know in the industry we tend to follow thought leaders and people who are awesome and amazing and inspire us. But if you're spending all your time comparing yourself to somebody like that online, you're going to be so fixated on trying to be like them, you're going to lose yourself. And that's not going to help you balance at all. And when it comes to taking criticism, because being criticized and receiving criticism is part of, everything that we deal with in life, it's important to take it seriously, but not personally. This is a really great quote. If there is truth or merit to the criticism, try to learn from it. Otherwise, let it roll right off you. And so it's important to understand that there might be feedback that you can take, and it might hurt, and you might feel bad about it, but as long as you're going to learn and grow from it, that's great. And on the other hand, there are some people that are just going to be having a bad day, and so if you can figure out that they're just in a mood and that criticism doesn't actually apply to you, you can let it roll off and move on with your life. Criticism also plays into talking about self-care. And I really like this article and this quote. True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you do not need to regularly escape from. And when we talk about this idea of hacking a work-life blank balance, we are trying to create a sustainable life. A life that we can continue to be excellent, continue to be good, and not feel burnt out. Crushing code 22 hours a day is not going to make you a better programmer after a while. You're going to want to quit the industry and crawl into a hole and cry. All right. After we have tried to balance everything, we can look into using tools and processes to help us further optimize for hacking our work-life blank balance. This whole process of hacking your work-life blank balance is a continual, ongoing process. I'm sharing a lot of tips with you today that work for me. I really encourage you to go and find out and figure out things that work for yourself. So for me, I use Trello for everything. I do my trip planning, I do my conference talk planning, if there are ever any emails I need to respond to, all sorts of things. They just get dumped in my Trello board. That really works well for me. I have a lot of calendar hacks. I live and die by my calendar. If it doesn't exist on my calendar, it is not happening. I really like to physically block out work hours for myself so people aren't prone to schedule me. It's amazing how much people do respect the sanctity of your calendar. So try blocking it off and see how many less meetings you get invited to. It'll be amazing. You can share calendars between family members, so if you have a household where you're constantly trying to manage carpooling and all sorts of things, having a shared calendar can really assist with that. You can also schedule reminders and to-dos, like when I schedule reminders to my husband to not murder the houseplants while I'm away. And I like to block off weeks around travel. I know a lot of things can go wrong with flights and all sorts of stuff. So it's just helpful for my schedule if I go ahead and schedule buffer days for when I know I'm going to be traveling. And then has anybody heard of Calendly? It's like my favorite tool in the world. This is about as close as you can get to a personal secretary. So it's a calendar scheduling system that syncs with your calendar. And so if somebody wants to meet with you, you simply send them a link to your Calendly. And they can choose pre-selected spots that you have designated that will automatically be blocked off if you already have an event scheduled there. It will save you all that back and forth email ping-ponging. It's blissful. If you are somebody who struggles with making sure you're executing at the level you would like to, like let's say you're like, oh, I'm going to set a goal to blog this year. I'm going to blog once a week. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to work on my SEO. It'll be great. And then you never do it. Getting an accountability buddy can be really, really great. Somebody who will keep you accountable. If you do not have an accountability buddy, this is actually a recipe to create your own accountability buddy in Slack, which is kind of cool. So you can get a nice little nagging reminder to stay on track. A couple email hacks that I tend to use are snooze features and, again, email tracking, but also just uncluttering your inbox is amazing. Starting to auto-subscribe and unroll from things that don't matter. Like after I got married, I do not know how I got subscribed to so many different things. Like I'm pretty protective of my email address and I'm still mad about it. My email hacks personally, if you want a response to your email, Always conclude with a call to action and a deadline. For all the time we spend crafting emails and trying to update people and then they never get read and there's that frustration and you want to like, rah, it was in my email, why didn't you read that? If you conclude with a call to action and a specific deadline, you will get people's attention, and then when you have to call them out on it because they didn't read it anyway, they have no excuse. Format your dates to be easy to remember. Day of week, date, and time zone. All these things are efficiencies that we can do on our end that will lead to a better result in the end with communicating with other people. And for the love of God, do not word vomit at people in email. It is exhausting and it is unproductive and it's not fun for them to read, and you will get a better response if you craft your emails a little bit more thoughtfully. Does anybody in here meal prep? Love the meal prep. So these are kind of my tips, but meal prepping is great for saving time, obviously, and money. You'll automatically have better nutrition, portion control, and you kind of avoid that conversation that you have with your spouse at 6 o'clock at night where you're like, what do you want for dinner? And they're like, I don't know, what do you want for dinner? And then 8 hours later, you're like, I am starving and ready to murder you. What are we gonna eat? If you meal prep, you already know what you're gonna eat, and it's amazing. So I would recommend joining the cult of the Instant Pot. I swear by my Instant Pot. It has taken my meal prep time from 6 hours to like 2.5 hours. It is magic. It will not explode, I promise. My mother was like, oh, they use those to make bombs. And I'm like, well, you can also make like beans and rice, Mom, it's fine. But that can be really, really helpful. If you're into fitness tracking, you can calculate your macros ahead of time and start to auto-populate MyFitnessPal just based on your meal prep. It's a lot easier to track. And then for when you don't have time, you can actually make freeze meals. I make what we call emergency freezer burritos. And so these are just burritos that can be really easily frozen and popped out of the microwave for whenever I don't have time to eat, or if I'm like abandoning my husband for 2 weeks. I'm like, here's 2 weeks worth of burritos, have fun. And there's a really helpful subreddit called Meal Prep Sunday that they have a lot of great ideas and are very open to beginners. Errand hacks, because one of the other things that I really hate that take time away are spending time in line waiting at the store for things that I have not been able to purchase via Amazon. So one of the best things you can do to hack your errand running is to avoid busy times. My mother's pro tip: if you know when kids are getting picked up from school, go during that time to the grocery store, because the people picking up the kids are normally the people who are also going to be doing the grocery shopping, and they can't be in both places at once, so go when they're picking the kids up. Use order ahead and pickup services when available. A lot of the grocery stores have actually started to implement this, and that can save you a lot of time of wandering up and down the aisles. All right, super awesome focus mode. When you really just have to get stuff done and you're feeling fried and you're feeling frazzled, but like there's no pushing this deadline, there's no balancing, you can actually start to train your brain to go into focus mode. If you think about it, video game soundtracks are built specifically for this purpose. They are built to help you get through a video game. So they're not distracting, but they're good at getting your brain in a place to be productive. So a lot of what I do is listen to different video game soundtracks, and I've trained my brain. So I will put on a playlist, and all of a sudden it really helps me get into focus mode for when I really need to execute on something. It can also be really helpful to remove distractions. I don't know who had the computer up here earlier, but I noticed they were using Momentum, which is my favorite extension. And so anytime you open up a new tab window, it gives you this really nice scenic like Google photo, and it's like, hi Jennifer, what task would you like to work on today? And I'm like, oh, Momentum, you're right, let me get my ass off Twitter and back to whatever I'm supposed to be working on. So that really works for me. If you need a little bit more motivation, I really like this plugin called Forest, and it's a Chrome extension. And you click it, and it's a little Pomodoro timer, and you plant a tree. And if you go into any of the websites you're not supposed to go to, you kill your tree. Do you want to kill your tree? No. So definitely check out Forest. That can be a really, really great motivational focus tool. All right, strategy number 5, recompensate. This is a little different from balance, because balance is trying to keep everything in tandem, but recompensating is all about paying our bodies back for the hard work we have been doing. And this is the point where I tell you it is perfectly okay to sit on your ass on the couch and play Candy Crush. It's okay. You can still hack your work-life balance and take over the world and take time to play stupid video games. Because burnout is real. Burnout is killing us. Long work hours, long work weeks are destroying us, and it's important to know that this is not maintainable for a lifestyle. So first, get yourself a hobby. And when I say hobby, this is again very different from your blank, your passion area. A hobby is something you do purely to bring you joy. Something you're not trying to get better at, something you're not trying to improve on, something that just makes you happy. Knitting is a great example of this. For me, it's drinking bourbon and playing Halo at night. That is my hobby. Along the notes of hobbies, have guilty pleasures, but do not feel guilty about them. Most people who know me know that I love The Bachelor. Like, I'm a software engineer. I should be like a very smart, pragmatic person, but damn, I love trashy reality TV. It's my jam. And so like 2 hours on Monday nights, like everybody knows, you do not talk to me. My girlfriend and I are drinking rosé and watching The Bachelor. That is my balance thing, and it is amazing how much happier I am, like at work and everything else I do, when I just have that balance and recompensation in my life of doing that. And you can tell because I'm a little bitchy right now because we're in the off season, so I don't have that release, but don't worry, we're coming back into it soon. But do not feel guilty about your guilty pleasure. It is okay to take time for yourself to do the things you love, even if they're super trashy. Plan things you look forward to. Again, self-care is not, looking forward to a vacation in Tahiti. It's building a sustainable life, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't plan things to reward ourselves and make ourselves happy. This is I think a year ago, some girlfriends and I went to RuPaul's Drag Con and had a blast. It was so much fun. This also means scheduling your social life. We tend to, be pretty good friends with a lot of our coworkers, I feel, but it's really okay to place more priority onto your social life and your friends. For introverts, this might mean meaningful one-on-one conversations. I'm really strict about making sure that I schedule one-on-one cocktails with my girlfriends, like on a monthly basis, just for us to reconnect and catch up and have a good time. If you're an extroverted person, maybe it's a better idea for you to do parties or rec sports or group outings or something fun like that. And it's okay to take your birthday off. I know it sounds really self-grandizing, but you can take one day a year to celebrate your damn awesome self and do not feel bad about it. All right, and finally, strategy number 6, and this is an important one, to work smarter and not harder. The big thing to understand here is just because you're doing the work does not mean you will get the recognition for doing the work. And I feel like a lot of people get really stressed out or frustrated in this area. Particularly women, we are terrible about bragging about our accomplishments. So don't think about it as bragging about your accomplishment. Think about it as explaining your value add. What have you brought to this project? What did you bring? And it is okay to talk about that. Remove the word should from your vocabulary. This is something I see people get really, really hung up on that prevents them from accomplishing everything they want to accomplish and from taking over the world. They will get really fixated on, let's say, they've been doing a really good job at work and there's a new project or a new feature they want to work on. And they don't get put on the feature and they're like, oh, well, my boss should just know I want to work on that feature. And it's like, no, honey. Your boss is not psychic. You need to learn to advocate for yourself. So if you can stop fixating on the way things should be and understand the way things are and then set yourself up for success in the real world that we live in, that's the best thing you can do. Also understand that you are entitled to nothing. Just because you're applying all these awesome processes and awesome skills does not mean that you will just get the golden key to anything you want. It takes hard work and dedication, but that does not mean you are entitled to anything. And expect failure. We fail as humans, and often we are harshly punished for it, but that needs to change because failure is how we learn. Don't get hung up on failure. As long as you're learning and growing from it, that's all that matters, and that's how you're going to learn and grow. Learn from your mistakes, and this is key because I am the kind of person that if I make a mistake, and especially if it happens to be in the vein of me saying something that could be hurtful to another human being, and I find out about it, that just crushes and destroys me. But I am not psychic. I cannot possibly understand everybody's emotions. So as long as I am aware of the mistake I've made and I am more aware and more empathetic moving forward, that's all I can ask of myself. So with all these strategies, we can start to make plans to take over the world because that's what we really want to do. So as a quick recap, we talked about prioritizing, figuring out what tasks we need to work on. We talked about automating, ways we can hack our lives to spend less time on the monotonous things and more time on the things we care about. We talked about balancing, making sure to take time for ourselves to consider our sleep and our health. Finding tools and processes that we can use to help us hack our work-life balance. We talked about recompensating, that it's okay to give back to yourself and you don't have to be working and pushing hard all the time, and working smarter and not harder. Because this is what we want. We want a nice, well-balanced triangle of our work, our life, our blank. We want everything in harmony, everything being awesome. The slides are available here if you would like to take a photo of this slide. There's a bit of an extended version posted up there right now. I do not know if we're doing questions. I see the organizer slowly wandering up here. If you have questions, go for it. Any questions? All right, have a lovely day, you wonderful humans.